What's up, guys? Hope you can hear me. Let me know if my audio is not coming through clearly, but welcome to Rukshan On X. Hope you're all having a good evening, good night, or wherever you're watching from around Australia and around the world. Of course, good morning if you're watching from somewhere else, or good afternoon, wherever you may be watching from. I do know a lot of people watch from different parts of the world, so thanks for joining in, guys, for another episode of Rukshan On X. If you haven't joined in before, it's a very casual show where we go through the news of the day. I go through X mainly, use Grok sometimes to get AI-fed news to see what AI thinks is the most trending news in Australia. And I do touch on topics like the March for Australia, like someone mentioned. A lot of people want me to debate Joel Davis. Every time I do this stream, Tyler says, debate Joel Davis. Why do you want me to debate Joel Davis? What is the debate going to be about? Flipside, thanks for the comment. Flipside says, I am part of the first gen born in Australia, and I'll be there on Sunday with my second gen son, waving the Australian flag. We got thanks for the help, mate. Audio is good, a little bit overmodulated though. Okay, that's good to know. Maybe I can let me turn down some of this audio filters, right? Because I actually do have a new setup, guys, so I don't think I'll crash today, which is good to know, right? Like, remember last time, I think last week, I fully crashed out, and that made me go out and get a new system just to kind of make sure it all runs smoothly. So I've turned the filters off, mate. So let me know if that actual filter sounds a little bit better with that turned off. But let's see how we go. I think Taylor's from Joel Davis. What's the debate that you want to see between me and Joel Davis? Do you think it is an honest debate between Joel and I? And if you don't know who Joel Davis is, he's one of the members of NSN. And, he has certain views on people like me and, certain things about Australia. And I don't know what that debate will be about, to be completely honest. Like, if it was an honest debate and it was a reasonable debate, sure, I could talk to someone like that. But I don't think these guys are really after a reasonable debate. Dan Max says, crashed at the wrong time. Yeah, last time it did crash at the wrong time. That's why I've gone ahead and got this new Mac Mini. Maybe I'll promote the Mac Mini a bit later on as well, because I think it's a great product for about just under $1,000. It's actually a great little machine that is a lot better than using a laptop. You kind of struggle with when you plug in a lot of different cameras and audio equipment to it. But this Mac Mini, M4 Mac Mini from Apple, is going great. And Ban Fruitcakes, thanks for joining in the show, mate, says Joel is a fruitcake. George, thanks for joining in, mate. Thanks, and the intro music was good. Yep, thank you, mate. Avi does not agree, but I think it's good music. And if you want to watch, guys, tomorrow I'll be on the Opposition podcast with Avi Yemeni at 7 p.m. if you want to continue to watch these live streams. We got one of the other trolls, one of my trolls here, David. David, thanks, mate, for joining in. I love the fact that you watch this show and help the algorithm. And you want to know when I'm getting deported, mate. You have much larger problems than me in Australia, which I'll be touching on, but I'm not going to be getting deported anytime soon. So, yeah. Some of the stories I'm going to be talking about, guys, obviously the Australian flag at the Palestine protest, I touched on that. I'm going to be talking about some of the things which are happening in Canberra. We've got the government stepping in to help with home loans. We've got Jacinta Allen with a new talk show. It seems like she's doing street interviews. So we'll watch a little bit of that. I'm going to be talking about Abby Chatfield as well. Apparently she's not going to have any children anymore because of climate change. We've got, what else? What's the other one? March for Australia. I'm definitely going to talk about March for Australia again because that's coming up next week on Sunday at midday. So we're going to be talking about that. And also, I've got here the self-defense laws in Victoria. So I'll be touching on a little bit of that as well. But pan fruitcake, there will be 1,499 Rukshans before you wake up, David. Yeah, David. Look, mate, I don't think you're going to get me deported anytime soon with the way you're going. Is Avi doing the final touches to his 2 tonight? Yes, I think Avi Yemeni tomorrow, Rebel News, will be doing a live stream potentially at some point during the day. So keep an eye out for that. Avi's very excited about that. I don't know if I've let this out. Maybe I wasn't meant to tell people. I have no idea. But Lucy, thanks for joining the show, Lucy. Lucy seems to know about this. Yasmin, thanks for joining it again. Just have to laugh at the haters. And guys, again, sorry for the late start, but it's a late night for me here in Canberra. I'm on the road. So whenever I'm on the road, it's always hard for me to start, around 7, 8 o'clock. I usually have to start around 9 o'clock. And Topher and Carly were also finishing their podcast off. Well, I think it's still going, but I think it should be finishing soon. So I wanted to wait a little bit because that starts around 7 o'clock as well. David says, first Fascist Day on the 31st. That's on the March for Australia. Tyler says, we're going to deport you back to Pakistan. Mate, I'm not Pakistani. You got it all wrong, man. Tina, thanks for joining on the show, Tina. Rukshan, you're the man, and I appreciate that you are true MSM. And look, some people disagree. I'm going to get to this story now. Let's get to this story from the other day that I talked about the protests. They're in around Australia. There were massive protests, okay? And this is what I said on X. And this has got people all worked up, actually. So let's have a look what I said on X. I said, at its core, the pro-Palestinian movement is an anti-Australian movement. To recognize the legitimacy of Australia is to recognize Israel's legitimacy. That is why they hate the Aussie flag. If you are still blind to this, you are just a useful idiot. And look, that had a lot of reactions, 300-something comments, 2.3k likes, and got shared around a bit. Some people took bookmarks of it. And there's lots of mixed comments, obviously. The usual ones, people calling me a Zionist, people calling me all sorts of names, of course. But a lot of people also agree. And a lot of people also misunderstand what I'm talking about when I say this particular statement. To recognize the legitimacy of Australia is to recognize Israel's legitimacy. So the pro-Palestinian movement proper, the one that's happening here in Australia specifically, and maybe you can find parallels around the world as well. But the Australian movement is unique because it's also intertwined with a lot of left-wing political groups. It's also intertwined with, the history of Australia, which a lot of these left-wing groups, as well as people a part of the pro-Palestine movement, say is the same type of genocidal settler colonial history. So that's why these people hate on Australia at these protests. Now, all of this came about because we had another incident. This time, a man being removed by police for waving the Australian flag, saying that, he's causing a scene there, and, being arrested almost and removed from that area. So let's watch a little snippet of that first.
Like here, it was peaceful, apart from one group of men with Australian flags throwing insults at marchers, police moving in swiftly and arresting a ringleader. Like here, it was peaceful, apart from one group of men with Australian flags throwing insults at marchers, police moving in swiftly and arresting a ringleader.
And the reporting is actually BS as well, right? So they're talking about this guy holding the Australian flag as being a ringleader, almost like it's something nefarious to be in Australia and have an Australian flag, right? And apparently it was all peaceful until the Australian flag came out. Now there's other videos of this particular incident, and you have people in the crowd who are cheering when the man is being removed. And this is not the first time. Like, this happens at almost all of these protests where we've had incidents of certain groups burning the Australian flag. We've had issues, for instance, of them actually openly talking about Australia no longer existing, decolonize Australia, the colony must fall. But this is the type of rhetoric which is spoken on those stages. So when I say they don't want to recognize the legitimacy of Australia, Israel, is because it kind of falls into that same worldview that they have, these left-wing organizers and a lot of the people that are there have about, colonialism, that they say that Israel is a colonial entity, that it's not legitimate. It's the same things they say about Australia. So that's what I mean when I say recognize Australia as being a legitimate state. Means that, well, what's the difference between Israel being, let's say that their argument is correct and it was colonized recently, or Australia's only been 300 years, maybe Israel's less than 100 years, let's say, in the modern history I'm talking about, or around 100 years. So what's the difference? It's the same concept. But of course, Israel in itself has more legitimacy than Australia. If you look at the historical context, there's been a connection between the Jewish people and that land that goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's a documented history, unlike the history of the British in Australia, which starts around 250, 300 years ago on this particular continent, and then the establishment of Australia during Federation in 1901. So it's a very short history, and this particular group that doesn't believe in the legitimacy of Israel also does not believe in the legitimacy of Australia. That is what I mean. It's not to deny the terrible things that we're seeing on TV and what some people say is a genocide, and that's also, people have different opinions on that. And it's not to deny all these type of passionate arguments that people make, and I do agree that a lot of people who are protesting at this particular movement might not have any inkling of this sentiment of the organizers and the groups involved. But overwhelmingly, you only have to listen to their speeches. You only have to look at the imagery that they have. You only have to look at the fact that there is very rarely, in the crowd shots you're seeing right now, Australian flags. And then you only have to look at the fact that when there is a guy with an Australian flag, they're either being removed from the scene, or it's these people are part of this movement, whether they're left-wing agitators or part of the pro-Palestine movement proper, burning the flag or desecrating the flag in some way. So this happens all the time. This is not like just a one-off thing. It's been happening for 2 years almost, where we've had this disrespect of the Australian flag. And frankly, a lot of people are just sick of it. They're just over it. Australia's also gone the extra mile. If you look at what Albanese's done in the Labour government, to even recognise, while Hamas is still there, to recognise this, two-state solution thing, and to recognise the state of Palestine. So Australia has gone above and beyond as, let's say, a country compared to some other places. America has not done that, for instance. So even in that same sentiment, with all these things interlinked, there is a hatred of the Australian flag. Now, people can disagree with me, but I think this is very purposefully done by this particular movement. And for them, destabilizing countries like Australia, this kind of undoing of the settler colonizing nations that they see around the world, which they believe Australia is one, is all just a part of their greater agenda. When you look at these political activist movements, and that's what I mean. So it does get misconstrued, but that's kind of the way that I see it. Well, William says Israel is more legitimate than Australia. Bro, that's a wild thing to say. Well, Israel has Jewish people in that part of the world have a link to that land that goes back thousands and thousands of years. You can find that link in the Bible. You can find that link in historical documents. You can find that link through the Roman Empire, previous empires beyond that, whether it's the Babylonians. And you can go back into the Egyptians. The mentioning of Israel in multiple documents, there is a historical link that links Israel and the Jewish people to that land. So whether this new state of Israel was established by colonial entities in the later stages in our modern history doesn't discount the historical link that Jewish people have to that particular land. And then, of course, the Ottoman Empire came and it was taken over by mainly Arabs. They built temples on top of the where the Jewish temples were previously. So all this stuff is documented through history. The existence of Australia as a British entity, as colonies first, separate states or separate colonies, and then the formation of states, and then the formation of a nation. happened in 1901, so very recently, and it happens under the same kind of pretense of laws, people deciding to form a nation, and countries that have overwhelming power. In this instance, the British Empire, deciding where these countries will be formed, regardless of the views of the indigenous people of that land and whatever claims that they make. So, of course, it is almost exactly the same thing. It's just that people don't want to, put it in the same category because they think that somehow this other particular movement that's happening right now is somehow more credible than what certain groups in Australia say, that indigenous groups in Australia say about Australia also having to give back the land, that it's all stolen. It's the same arguments. So that's what I'm talking about. Let's have a look at some of your comments, and let's see what you guys have said about what I'm talking about so far. Peter says, the hairdresser who wouldn't save Israelis has had her business evicted by the landlord. I did see that. Now, whether she was closing already or not in the next couple of months or something, I remember something like that, a detail like that, but maybe she's just closed up shop earlier. Convenient that Avi might be turning into Avilia when I'm working. No, that's not happening. That we will announce beforehand so everyone can tune in to see Avi in the pink tutu on the Opposition podcast. Don't worry, Abby. Thanks for joining in again. David says you're being a fascist. Why am I being a fascist, man? I'm just sharing a political opinion. You can chill out about that. Tina says, well said. It's all about dividing the people. For sure. I mean, a lot of this is divisive, what's happening right now with these protests. This is not about, people protesting here to raise awareness of what's happening in a foreign war in Palestine and in Israel and in Gaza, right? However you want to term those things, should not have any issue whatsoever with the Australian flag. Australia is actually sending millions and millions of dollars of aid to that region, specifically to help the Palestinian people, as well as diplomatically, Labour and the prevailing government of the day here in Australia has overwhelmingly dismissed Israel, like to the point of insulting the leaders in that country, cutting visas, as well as recognizing the state of Palestine, despite objections from Israel and from the United States of America. So Australia has gone above and beyond in that relationship. So why would you disrespect the Australian flag? But overwhelmingly, this group does. You can not believe what you see with your own eyes and what you see these organizers talk about, and the fact that they've even failed to condemn the burning of the Australian flag. They will not even condemn it, these particular organizers. So that tells you a lot. Adam, I'll just put your comment up there. Thanks, mate. Thanks for the contribution. Someone says, man, Ivy was in the IDF. When you going to drop him? I mean, I'm not particularly interested in people's backgrounds in that essence. Like everyone that's literally, if you're in Israel, that is almost a part of the natural progression of things that you serve in the IDF. It is almost a law that people there that would serve in the IVF, especially a lot of the younger people, depending on when that came into fruition. And it's the same thing. I'm friends with people from all parts of the world that have objectionable civil ethnic conflicts, whether that be from people from Africa, people from parts of the Middle East who have perhaps served on, weird political movements or maybe even terrorist movements. I do have friendships across all types of different backgrounds and cultures, and I don't necessarily agree with their politics or the things that they have been involved in, especially like people from Africa. I know a lot of Sudanese people who have been involved in ethnic conflicts, and they have been in different militaries. Even in the country of my heritage in Sri Lanka, there was a civil war that went for 25 years. Now, I have friends from both ethnic groups, some whose I know for 100% fact, whose families served in the LTTE, in the terrorist forces that, so-called, that the government fought against in that country. Now, those people are some of my really, really good friends, despite the fact that their parents, were involved, or their family members were involved in this terrorist force declared by the government. So it's a complex country, living in a diverse, multicultural country like Australia, which is something that we celebrate. means that we will always know people and associate with people that not everyone agrees with. And that's just life. You got to deal with that. Shouldn't be going around dictating to people who they can and who they can't be friends with because you have some particular view of some foreign conflict. William says, I'm anti both. Taking a side in a religious war is retarded. I think he's trying to say retarded. Yeah, look, there's no reason for Australians to pick a particular side when it comes to any foreign war. Like, there's no obligation. Obviously, people usually will err on the side of, civilians, innocent people. Obviously, you don't want to see harm come to people. And, most of us, almost the majority of us, would be looking at the scenes which are happening there and would want to have that come to an end where civilians are not harmed. If you ask me whether I have issues with a government military force engaging in a war with people who have also engaged in an act of war or terrorism, if you start a war, there's going to be consequences. And I think, we've done that multiple times in the West, where we've gotten involved in multiple wars and conflicts because of certain people have brought those wars to our shores, whether it's through acts of terrorism or other means which might impact us. Now, you can, again, disagree on whether those wars were merited or not, and we do that a lot when it comes to Middle Eastern wars that, the US, Australia, and countries like that have been involved in. But sometimes it's just the natural course of the world. Like, war is a part of maintaining peace sometimes, and it's not pretty. So there's always going to be conflicts in the world, and we don't necessarily have to take a side. But, we're forced in Australia, for instance, to have particular views and opinions, because if you look at the fact that we've had almost 2.5 years of these protests happening on our streets, we have this democratic process which allows people in this country, of people who come from all types of backgrounds, to then take their grievances about something that's happening overseas onto our streets. We live in such an amazing country that is also possible and allowed and accepted as something. But that does also lead to tensions, right? It leads to issues and clashes between different communities, and sometimes even those conflicts come into our very own shores when we look at things like synagogues being firebombed, for instance, or people being denied access to hairdressers very recently because they're Jewish. There's all these instances where things that are happening overseas can impact cohesion in Australia. And we talk about that a lot. And I think the biggest disrespectful thing that I've seen that I really don't like is the disrespect for Australia itself, the flag, the fact that these left-wing movements that some people say have hijacked the pro-Palestinian movement, that's what they claim. But a lot of the time, the organizers, the Palestinians themselves who are the organizers, do not call them out. They work with them, they talk with them, they share the stage with them. So my presumption based on that is that they support their views. That's just how it is. A lot of comments, Aussie. Gareth says, Albo is our ringleader. I will get to Albo soon. Convoy Lee says, and yet terrorist flags were flying high as Australian flags were burnt in Sydney. Go figure. I mean, yeah, there's been instances of that. Just the other day, I think in was Brisbane, perhaps there was Hamas flags being flown. Now, these are terrorist organizations in Australia. There should be no support for terrorists in this country. There's one thing supporting the people in that country, but it's a different thing altogether supporting a terrorist organization like Hamas. Taran says there were Australians before 1901, Rukshan. Yes. I mean, there were, at that time, before, the existence of Australia, when the British landed in this country, all right, when the British established colonies in Australia, those people over time perhaps then decided to form a country, the nation called Australia, which was federated in 1901, the modern day Australia that we know today. But a lot of people, for a long time, as they were here on the colonies of Australia, would have considered themselves to be some type of British or Irish or whichever place that they hailed from. That would have been their particular way that they identified themselves. And then, yes, of course, you form a nation over time, and you federate yourselves, and you become a country, and you have laws, and you enact acts. And look, we can argue again about what creates an ethnicity or what creates a nation. but a lot of people in this country would have considered themselves to be more British for a long period of time, rather than what we know today as Australian, that has developed over that time. Damn, William says, you really are a Zionist. Look, I have no problem with the existence of the state of Israel. I have no problem with the existence of Australia. I think they're both legitimate in the same way. I have no problem with, the British Empire, for instance, going around colonizing countries and creating new nations. I have no problems with New Zealand. I see conquest. I have no problem with what Genghis Khan did, for instance. There's been many empires. There's been many nations created over a long period of history. Now, we can talk about the methods and the ways that they did those things, but in essence, I do recognize the legitimacy of nations that have come about through this process. So there's nothing unique really about Australia or Israel in that sense. If you compare it in the modern times, the difference between Australia and Israel really is historically. That history goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years to that land, and it's a well-documented history. Of course, Australia's history is also well-documented since they settled this nation, but it's only a couple of hundred years old. Josh Cook asked, do you think there will be riots on Sunday's protest? Josh, I'll get to the March for Australia towards the end, because I found that a lot of the shows I spend a lot of time talking about the March for Australia, and then I don't go through covering the news. There's someone that's got a problem with curry. Look, I mean, maybe there's different odors in all types of different food. But it's very popular in Australia. It's one of the actually biggest popular dishes, different types of curry. So maybe people here like it. Arthur says they hate us and our flag. Akhtar says this guy should be a comedian making up his own history. Look, if you ask anyone that's anyone from around the Muslim or the Islamic world about that part of Israel, the history of Israel, they will have their own interpretation. But the facts of the matter are that there was multiple nations there in that region. One of those nations, historically, we can track it back to even especially the Roman Empire times, was Israel. And then a lot of that changed when the Ottoman Empire took hold of that area, when the Arab, I guess, colonization of that region took place. And there were changes over time. But I'm not going to deny the history of that place because of a certain view that the Muslim or the Islamic world had. The understanding of that history, especially in the West, is very different. It's not clouded by this religious obsession with what is right and wrong in that area. Anyway, guys, let's keep moving on. There's lots of comments here. I've got two super chats as well that I'll bring up. We've got one from Baseline Benny. Thanks, Baseline, for supporting this show. Just says, thanks, mate. And then Insane Shooter says, I like you, Rukshan. I hate you feel the need to try to defend yourself. I understand why, but it bothers me. Thanks for the super chat. Anyone that wants to do a super chat and you want to support my show on YouTube, guys, you can jump on and you can do a super chat. Of course, I'm reading a lot of comments up, but I will spend a bit of time depending on the questions you ask me in the super chat. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not really... People think I'm defending myself. I actually don't really care about the things that people are saying about me. These are my views and these are opinions. A lot of these people that are saying these things to me, are people I think usually argue for things like free speech and how important it is. Well, free speech means that sometimes you have to listen to opinions that you don't like or you don't agree with. And people don't like my views and opinions on these things, but I'm comfortable with it as an individual. I'm comfortable with my views about what's happening. For instance, I don't support terrorism. There is no way on earth that I will want to either reward or celebrate the terrorism of a group like Hamas. There's no good that can happen to anyone. And at the same time, if war crimes are being committed by a government force, a military force, when it comes to traditional warfare, and there's war crimes being committed, of course, those things should also be adjudicated in the correct manner. So I'm all for all of those things, but I do have set views when it comes to terrorists, and especially someone that loves the West and defends the West and knows just how bad terrorism has been for our part of the world. Madeline Love says, I've picked a side for the first time in 6 decades. I've decided that the Israelis care about their children and the refugees in Gaza definitely don't. I'll take that as a statement, Madeline, because I'm just going to keep on moving on to the next story. There's lots of comments coming through, guys. Thank you so much for joining in and being a part of the conversation. And the next story that I'm going to be bringing up, let me just bring up my story here, is one that is the biggest news story, I guess, in Australia today, and that is Anthony Albanese jumping in, I guess the Labor Party jumping in to help homeowners. So let's have a listen to what Anthony Albanese says. Let's have a look at some of the posts from the Albanese government and some of the reaction. Now, I'm not an economist by any means, and I'll admit I have a limited knowledge of this kind of field, but there's some general things that I'll like to comment on. So let's watch Albanese first.
Tag someone looking to buy their first home, because from the 1st of October, every first home buyer can get into their own home with just a 5% deposit. Tag someone looking to buy their first home, because from the 1st of October, every first home buyer can get into their own home with just a 5% deposit.
Now, there's a few more posts that I want to bring up. Here we go. We've got Albanese here. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. He goes, mark your calendars. From October, you'll only need a 5% deposit to buy your first home. Too many people feel the dream of home ownership is out of reach, so Labor's making it easier. It'll cut years off the time it takes to save for a deposit, and you won't need to pay a single dollar in mortgage insurance. The housing challenge won't be solved overnight, but we're making real progress. And we got a photo here of Albanese with a young family, and he says Labor accelerates 5% deposit scheme to help first home buyers. Now, some of the things that they say there, like, this statement that Albanese says, too many people feel the dream of a home ownership is out of reach. That's definitely true, especially for young people, depending on where they want to live, especially if they want to live like closer to work, maybe closer to like the inner suburbs of the city. I'm just talking about Melbourne, for instance, but it would be the case in all parts of Australia, particularly somewhere like Sydney. I think it's insane if you want to live anywhere close to the inner suburbs of Sydney. Seems more and more like that Australian dream of owning a house is slipping away from the younger generations, and they're having to rely more and more on their parents, or they're competing with a lot of people who are buying homes who have just recently come to Australia, or even foreign investors, for instance, and of course major corporations that might be involved in these kind of build to rent type schemes. So there is a lot of pressure on younger people, and we've been talking about housing crisis in Australia now for it feels like years, since even the election, right? Even well before that, it's been an ongoing problem. So this is what Labor has come up with to address it, which is, I guess they're cutting out the insurance part and helping with this 5%, but it just feels like there's something wrong here. Just like a gut feeling. I think a lot of people have that gut feeling when governments get involved in this type of process, that things will and eventually do go wrong. And this could, of course, end up also pushing up housing prices. So I'm going to look at some of the articles where people are talking about this, and I'll get some of your comments on screen as well. Some of you guys might have better ideas on this, so I'll read some of your comments and give some of my opinions as well. There was actually another video that I saw regarding this. If I'm stuttering, guys, it's been a long day for me. So let's have a look. Here's another video I saw.
To own your own home? Do you think you need a giant 20% deposit to own your own home?
Not anymore. Here's why. From October 1, you'll be able to buy your first home with a 5% deposit. This will help many people get into their first home sooner, cutting years off the time it takes to save for a deposit. And you won't have to pay a single dollar in mortgage insurance. We're turning promises into progress. And this is just one of the many ways we're making it easier for you to buy your first home.
Like my initial reaction to all of this, it feels like it's kind of like a band-aid solution. And a lot of people have been throwing this around. But governments, when they get involved in this manner to try to stimulate people, getting into the houses, and it seems like a good thing to allow more people not to have a large deposit and also the insurance that people would have to pay is kind of taken care of by the government in a way. It's literally taxpayers, right? It's not even the government. It's not Labor's money. It's taxpayer money that's backing all of this. But yeah, this band-aid solution, is it really addressing the reason that we're in this spot to begin with, right? Is there other things that we could do to help the housing crisis? People have talked about mass immigration, for instance, a favorite topic of mine that we talk about week in, week out. Will cutting immigration help people get into housing, right? There's all these discussions around this, and does something like this just mask all that, put this massive band-aid over all of that, and allow the government to appear to be doing something, appear to be having a win, which all sounds great on paper, and it looks great for these TikToks and things that they're doing, but will it actually lead to further damage, and will it actually lead to something where people that can't necessarily afford to be in these houses, for instance, for whatever reason, are ending up in homes, perhaps, as well as then, the cost of living is still very high. People might struggle with all of that. What does this all mean if this happens on a mass scale, especially if we end up in some sort of financial turmoil as a world, or even as an Australia in the future? So these are the things that people are worried about. I'm going to bring up some articles around this, and I found it particularly interesting that The Guardian, which is more left-wing, had a particular piece on this. So let's bring up The Guardian piece, and I'll have a read of that with you. The Guardian is pretty sympathetic towards Labour Party, so this is what they wrote. Labour's first home buyers scheme, a backward step, likely to push prices higher, experts warn. Labour's major new expansion to the home guarantee scheme will help first-time buyers who would have bought anyway, experts say, and is likely to push prices higher. The scheme, which has been around since 2020, helps eligible first-time buyers get into the market with a deposit of as little as 5%, without the need to pay tens of thousands in lenders' mortgage insurance, and taking years of the time required to save for a deposit. To achieve this, the government provides a taxpayer-backed guarantee of up to 15% of the value of the home loan, which the government says will slash years of the time it takes to save for a deposit. Claire O'Neill, the housing minister, at the weekend announced that from October there would be no limit on the number of first-home buyers who could take advantage of the policy against a previous cap of 50,000. So pretty much it's unlimited. I don't even think there's like an assets test, like anyone, depending on your financial status. Even you have they're saying billionaires, which I don't think billionaires their children would take advantage of something like this in that way. They would probably already have the money to be able to get a house. But that's the example that people are saying, that anyone can actually access this scheme now. Eligibility rules will also be significantly expanded, including boosted property price caps and eliminating limits on applicants' income. Cameron Cusher, an independent property expert, said expanding the guarantee scheme was only going to drive prices higher and increase competition for the housing stock. Yeah, all of a sudden you have a lot of people that perhaps weren't going to be entering the market even, right? That might be incentivized by this to also go into the market. So depending on how many houses are available, it feels like the housing prices would be pushed up, right? Kushner said it was very hard to believe Treasury's analysis that this week's policy announcement would only add 0.5% to home prices over 6 years. He said previous rounds of policies that boosted demand for housing had combined with falling interest rates led to substantial price rises. This type of stimulus is getting larger and more exotic. I expect prices to be higher, then for the government to provide even larger levels of support for the next cohort of home buyers. It's good politics, it's not good economics. Brendan Coates, the director of the Grattan Institute's Housing and Economic Security Program, questioned the purpose of easing the scheme's eligibility rules. Everyone who is going to struggle to buy a home, which is overwhelmingly those on low incomes, were already eligible, Coates said. Which is a good point. It's a backward step in the sense we are offering support to people who really don't need it and who are likely to buy anyway. Coates said the announcement was likely to push prices up, even if it would not have a big impact on them. This is just another in a long line of policies that sound good but won't make much of a difference, or arguably make the housing affordability problem worse. And it shouldn't distract us from the fact that we are failing to build the houses we need on the supply side, and that's where the government should be doing more. So I'm not going to keep reading this, guys. If you want to read the rest of the article, you can go to The Guardian and have a look at it. But I just found it interesting that they weren't just giving the rubber stamp of approval this particular policy by Labour, which they have a tendency to do when it comes to this left-wing media newspapers. I also saw this that Malcolm Roberts shared. Let me just pull that up because it was very interesting if you consider what it actually means, the way the government's worded one of these announcements. So let me just bring up what Malcolm Roberts shared. So it doesn't kind of make sense at first, but 7 News had a headline tweet. The Albanese government has agreed to freeze the national code that puts restrictions on housing construction in Australia as a part of a plan to spark the stalled home building sector. It's the first major policy move to come from this week's economic roundtable. Now, there's probably a lot more to this than that, but let's just consider that headline for a second. And Malcolm Roberts says, read the first line. The government introduced legislation to restrict house construction. What the hell? What a mess government's creating. By the way, One Nation first proposed a policy to scrap Labour's latest National Building Code additions. One Nation is driving Labour policy change. What's happened here really is the government is saying that they are taking the restrictions of these codes. They're freezing these codes that they themselves put up that have stalled, right? That have stalled the home building sector. So it's literally a government-created problem. They're saying that they themselves created this issue, but to help you, because they're so benevolent now, they themselves are going to take these restrictions that they had put on the housing sector so more building can happen. Why were there restrictions like this in the first place? Especially when we've been talking about the housing crisis for so long. Why hasn't it always been easier for the building sector to construct new houses, right? What's the difference now? So when you read into this, and I'm not going to go into deep detail about this, a lot of this does feel like the making of the governments. Like these problems are created by themselves, and then they try to band-aid it by using taxpayer money when it comes to this particular scheme. So I think disaster is on the horizon, just from my gut feeling about these things. But I could be wrong. And there could be a lot of people that are excited by the fact that they can take advantage of this. But as those experts have said, people who are already in a bad financial economic shape that may have needed the help of the government in this instance were already eligible for this scheme, which is pre-existing. All they've done now is made it available to everyone in an unlimited capacity. And what the ramifications of that are yet to be known, but it does feel like it's going to be more expensive houses, again, still with a limited supply. So, yeah, it's just crazy. Disaster in the making, I reckon. I don't understand why they had these restrictions in the first place. I think that was great that Malcolm Roberts noticed that, because why were there these restrictions on the sector anyway? And why can you just ease them all of a sudden? What's going on there? Again, I'm not an expert, guys. We had another super chat. Let me just build this up. This is from Insane Shoots. You do care. Seen plenty of your ex posts, and I agree with you, but I feel you let them get to you personally, sometimes emotionally. My opinion is you need to remove the emotion. I guess that's what it comes across when I share these things. But a lot of the times, the things that I'm sharing on X, especially like a lot of the hatred and the racism towards me, is literally just to show people that this is what happened. I personally, I'm not impacted by that. Like, I'm doing really well for myself in terms of, participating in society. You know what I mean? Being a part of the community where I get to do these kind of shows that I want to do. I'm working in Canberra, for instance, with the senator. Like, in that sense, the things that people say about me online, it's just in the online space. And yes, as a proud Australian that loves this country, yes, sometimes it is disheartening to see the way that people are disparaged from being a part of this country and actually helping to make it better. I'm more worried about the political fallout and the political impact of some of the crazy things that I see, right? Especially some of the racism and things I see. I worry about the fact that, there is no counter to the way that this country is changing in terms of demographics, to the extent that people are being alienated and isolated when you should be bringing them into, taking that same vision of building a great Australia. A lot of these people are being sold the victimhood of the left and, becoming victims and voting for Labour, for instance, or voting for the Greens. So I look at it from the conservative side of politics, and I think we can do better. I think we can get more people on board with building a better Australia that, loves this country, that shows patriotism, that understands concepts like mass immigration being bad, not just for Australian citizens who are already existing, but even for new migrants that are coming here that want to be a part of this country, just to understand the basic concepts that something like mass immigration without no assimilation is actually a bad thing. You shouldn't want to move to a country like Australia and make it like the same country that you left behind, right? You shouldn't want to do that. Why would you want to do that? If your country was so good to begin with, why would you even be here? And if you want to go back to your old ways, if you want to bring in all this kind of nonsense from your old country, what are you doing? Like, why just go back? Like that's kind of the things that I'm worried about. So people think I take it emotionally, but it's just the way that I talk. It's just the way that I kind of phrase things when I talk about it online. And a lot of the time, it's just to invite that conversation and let people have their say, because I'm interested in people's opinions of this. And especially a lot of the kind of the crazy kind of racist comments that are directed towards me, that is not a reflection of the reality of the real world outside the echo chambers of somewhere like X. And it's a very small, minute, fringe group of people that engage in this. And a lot of the times, you see that in the comments themselves, that these people just represent a small, fringe subset of people who have very extreme views. Sometimes they're very passionate about those views, but it's not shared by the wider population. But yeah, thanks for the concern. I was just replying to this comment from Insane Shoots, and I appreciate that, and I get that people maybe do reach out to me in private and talk to me about these things. But I guess I'm at the cold face of it. I'm at the forefront of it, dealing with these issues, because I do very openly, who I am, and I talk about my love of Australia and the love of the country. Obviously people hate me for that because I love Australia, and they want to, tell me that I should be deported because I love this country and I want to contribute to this country the way that I've done in the past, and I want to continue to do that. But people have obviously take issue with that, which is, whatever. It is what it is. Noisy Turtle says, good to see you put some clothes on today, Rukshan. I have learned since my last live stream that I should not wear colors which are the same as my dark brown skin color. But this is the even darker kind of burgundy type of, deep brown, something like this. So I'm glad you can see the difference between that and my skin. Let's have a look at some of the comments, guys, and we'll get to the next story after this. So let's pull up some of your comments on the housing. We've got here one from Dan Mack, who says 5% deposit on a home, then the government will tax your spare room, and so you lose in the end. Anyway, I mean, that was a crazy story. I'm not talking about that today because that happened, I think, on Friday or Saturday. That story that came out of some research institute or think tank. And I believe even Malcolm Roberts from One Nation actually asked Katie Gallagher, the treasurer, in the Senate today about this proposal or this idea floated by a research institute. I call them a think tank, to tax the spare bedroom in dwellings. So they're saying that there's lots of houses out there where there's multiple bedrooms, but maybe there's only a couple living there, like older couples or young couples that aren't utilizing those rooms. So therefore, if you have extra rooms in your dwelling, you should be taxed for that spare bedroom or spare bedrooms. And that's what Dan Mack was talking about, which is crazy, right? Like, I think these things have been tried overseas as well, and there's people bringing up different historical context around where they've tried different things like this in the past. Something about windows in the UK. But it was very unpopular. But surprisingly, today in the Senate question time, Senator Babette asked Katie Gallagher again about whether the Labour Party will introduce new taxes, GST increases and taxes on super, things like this. And it was also asked by, I think, James Patterson from the Liberal Party as well. I could be wrong on exactly who the senator was, but both of them put it directly to the Labour Party today in the Senate whether they would increase taxes, right? Whether Labour would promise not to increase taxes, and she could not give a straight answer. And that was on the GST and on super taxes. So, look, in all likelihood, there are some types of new taxes which are coming for Australians that Labour are going to slug us with. And maybe these stories that they're putting out there through the media about taxing spare bedrooms and all these kind of crazy taxes they're thinking about, maybe it's a way for them to say these are the extreme things, but we're not going to tax your bedroom. We're just going to maybe increase the GST or something like this. I don't know, but it does feel like the way that they avoided that question, that something is coming down the pipeline, which sucks really. The fact that people have voted for this. Like, we kind of knew that the government, Labour government, was capable of doing this, and it looks like now they want to go through with it, at least in some manner, because they are refusing to rule it out when asked about it. Let's see what other comments you guys have. We've got Kavita here saying Straya 92. I think she's laughing at someone's comment. There you go. Yeah, there we go. She was saying disaster. And we got here. Okay, that's Adam's comment. The drone says, "Where's Avi hoping he's got PTSD?" Why do you hope such a thing on people, mate? I don't think he's got anything like that. But why would you hope that kind of suffering on an individual? And we got a very astute observation here from John. The government creates all the problems. Yeah, that's typical hallmark of governments, whether in Australia or any other country in the world. They usually create the problem and then they offer a solution which addresses the initial problem, but that creates also new problems. Like, this is kind of how government works. It's very rare for them to just solve a problem that they did not themselves create. 1984 Punk says, Asians come to Australia and call us racist, send them all back. There is some truth to the fact that there are people coming to Australia from countries and places where they are not as tolerant or accepting as Australia, or just in general the West. They have, for instance, certain caste systems or certain religious reasons why they don't allow other people to have the same type of rights in those countries, and even ethnic differences where they've obviously partaken in certain types of conflicts between different ethnicities, and there has been like things like ethnic cleansing and things like this. And yes, those same people do turn up in Australia, which I think is very wrong, and then proceed to call generous people of this country who have welcomed them into this nation to call them racist for having certain concerns about what's happening to their country. I think that's very wrong. And by far, from what I've experienced in my travels, Western countries in general, Australia specifically, despite the small issues that we have when it comes to racism, let's say, very small minor issues, I believe, if you look at the grand scheme of how this country is running, the way that things work, it is one of the least racist places. In general, white people, in terms of in Western nations, Christian countries especially, are very tolerant and accepting. They have a totally different set of values, and they are very open to different people, living in their countries. Now, maybe that's come back to bite them in the ass a little bit. Yes, I understand those worries and where they're coming from, because you are now seeing people who come and take everything for granted, have no appreciation, don't show any type of respect for the country itself, completely deny, the Christian heritage of some of these nations, overwhelm systems, for instance, welfare systems, then run around calling everyone racist. Like, that's true. Those things are definitely happening. Whether that's all immigrants, I don't agree with that. I don't think so. I think many people totally understand what it means to have the privilege of being in this country, being a part of a country like Australia, and how lucky and blessed they are to have that. But because of the left, who teach hatred of the nation, who want to divide people, who see people in different classes and as victims, they preach a lot of this nonsense to immigrants as well, and they get brainwashed. So if someone might turn up in this country and just love the fact that and feel so lucky to be in Australia, but it only takes a few months of re-education by these left-wing institutes and people, and the things that our leaders say, including the government, people in the Labour government say, something like the voice to Parliament. How divisive is that? That's like an apartheid style thing that they wanted to do. So when you get to these kind of concepts being pushed down your throat as an immigrant, there would be some people who would fall into the trap of believing that they are in a racist country, and it's insane that that's happened. All right, guys, I'm gonna keep reading some more. There's some comments I want to bring up, but I don't think the YouTube algorithm would be down for some of these comments, so I'll read some of the stuff you guys are saying, guys. And I see you guys are having arguments in between yourselves as well. Tina says, typical trolls, they're revolting. You are fabulous. Thanks, Tina. Thanks for the support. Tika, something that I probably agree with. Most real racists are white and black leftists, Labour or Green voters too. Daniel says, can't wait to see you at the 31st of August. Yeah, I'll definitely be there for the March of Australia. March for Australia. Oh, I wish I could bring some of these comments up, but maybe I should do an end of the show thing in future episodes where we just go on like Rumble or X, so I can read some of these more touchy comments here. Eric says, I've learned to ask politicians questions they don't know the answers and don't answer. I've learned not to ask politicians questions they don't know the answers and don't answer because of it. Yeah, there's some truth to that. A lot of them know the truth and the answers. Like, I think Katie Gallagher perhaps knows that there potentially that new taxes might come, and that is why she couldn't give a straight answer to that. Lucy says, Lucy, you follow me on Facebook, guys. Thanks, Lucy. If you're not following me on Facebook, guys, jump on Facebook. I put out the content everywhere the same way, but Lucy says, you're very much loved, Aussie Rukshan. Your 295k followers would agree. Thanks, Lucy, and thanks for supporting me for so many years on Facebook. I love seeing your comments, and I really appreciate the fact that you're joining in on this show as well. How lucky are we, Australia? When I was a kid, I heard they were considering making an Israeli state somewhere in Western Australia. We wouldn't have Western Australia now. Let that sink in. Peter, I'm not sure exactly if that's 100% accurate. I do see people saying things like this. I don't think, the Jewish people, the Zionist movement at that time, would have wanted it anywhere except in their traditional historical homelands. I got to read this one because I think Adam is Chris Ovaries. That's the nod to Chris Coveries. Guys, I'm going to keep moving on. There's just so many comments. I'll probably read one more and then we'll get to the next story. Crystal says there's only one race, the human race, aka Homo sapiens. Cultural differences should be respected when entering another country. I agree. There are cultural differences between countries. Like, it is important that nations maintain a one main dominant cultural identity. Like, that is so important for a country. Like, it is so important, and it happens in most countries around the world. The only place that's not happening anymore are these countries which have gone down this path of an extreme variation of multiculturalism, right? I don't think multiculturalism it sounds nice as a concept, and in the perfect world, perhaps if humans were all kind of decent and nice to each other and respected different people and different cultures and things like this, it might work out. But in reality, I don't think multiculturalism actually works. You need like a monoculture, one culture, for instance. For Australia, for instance, it's a lot of it's Anglo-Celtic British heritage. So it's a part of the Western Anglosphere. It's based on Christian, Judeo-Christian, if you take it back to where Christianity comes from. Those values that create these kind of nations that were created all around the world by the British Empire. And it's been successful. It's actually worked very well when you consider just in this short amount of time how advanced Australia is as a country. To think in 200, 300 years, Australia is where it is today, when there's countries that have been around for thousands of years in different parts of the world that haven't managed to get their shit together. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that of the culture, the identity, and the roots of this particular nation and how it came about. So definitely, I believe in this concept of like a monoculture, not necessarily multiculturalism. I think not all cultures are equal. I'm sorry to upset people, but not all cultures are equal, and definitely not all cultures are equal when they come to a different country and they try to integrate with each other. You just end up having these enclaves, these kind of ghetto areas. There's places where people can't go anymore. You have these religious ideas now kind of entering into what is essentially a nation built on Christian foundations. So there's a set of moral and ethical values which underpin what Australia is and the way that the outlook of people in this country. And then all of a sudden you're introducing stuff that's like whether it's like Islamic culture or Hindu culture or Sharia law or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like those things are foreign in the sense of they're not always compatible. And there's great things about the West that have made the country great, for instance Australia, and that is why you're coming here. So maybe there's other things like are not necessary for this country. That's how I think. If you wanted to practice exactly the way that you lived in your country, you should find somewhere else maybe that you can do those things, or stay and improve your country. All right, these kind of things are what I believe in. But if you want to live in the West, then you have to accept that there's a dominant culture. It's rooted in Christianity, and these are the values that the people in that country have, and these are the laws. This is the expectations, and this is what we have to work towards if you want to be a part of this country. And that is what citizenship should mean. Of course, we have religious freedom. We have all these freedoms that allow people to express themselves and have parts of their identity and culture, but it shouldn't clash to the point where it then starts to dominate. And sadly, without assimilation, with the fact that the left is really pushing this whole diversity nonsense in an extreme manner, it creates tensions and problems, and I don't think anyone's happy as a result. So it's really hard to see a future in this without seeing what we're seeing in the UK, right? That's Australia in 5 to 10 years in the current path that we're going down. And I don't agree with that. I don't think it's a good idea. And I know people will say, Rukshan, you're a part of the problem and all these kind of things. Look, people have different outlooks on the world. Like I understand my place in Australia. I know that I'm not a white Australian, but if I'm in this country, I have to contribute to this country. I have to take on board the values and the ethics of this country. Now, for me, it's a little bit different. My family come from generations of Catholics, so our upbringing and our outlook on the world is kind of shared in that sense. Since the 1500s in Sri Lanka, since the time the Portuguese introduced Christianity into that part of the world, into the Sri Lankan colony at that time by the Portuguese, and then of course the Dutch. Same thing, the influence in Sri Lanka, and then the British influence in Sri Lanka. Long before Australia existed, I think from the 1600s onwards, the East India Company or the British had a massive role in shaping Sri Lanka. So I've had those influences historically passed down through a long period of time, which has led to my name being Rukshan Fernando, for instance. So there's different ways that people integrate. So I'm a bit maybe luckier in that sense that I'm more able to adapt and easily assimilate into Australian culture. But we should be encouraging more of that. If you want to have people coming from overseas, you cannot let those other cultures dominate. It spells disaster, and you don't see it happening in China. You don't see it happening in India. They protect their cultural identity. They protect their history. Sadly, you can now go to parts of India and Sri Lanka, and you can see the efforts that have gone into preserving their British history as well. And these are things that we're now denying in the West, for instance, and trying to remove. And those things aren't really done in that same way. The history is understood. It's insane. I'm digressing. I'm going on a tangent, but I was just trying to answer that question. John Brown says, migrated here when I was 3, and 50 plus years later, I still get called a POM. I mean, yeah, there's a bit of rivalry, right? Even like it's interesting, like Australia differentiates itself from the British in that way, and it's true. There's a different, over time, a different country and a culture has developed. A different identity has developed over time. Now, today it's being challenged. It's changing for the worse, I believe. So it's really up to the people that are here today, right now. We can look back to history and talk about how great things were. I get it. But it's actually up to the people of today to make that difference, to make that impact on preserving that past, that history, and obviously pushing it into the future. Because the way things are going right now and the demographic shifts that are happening, like we might have to learn another language, right? I might have to learn some Mandarin or maybe some Hindi or something, right, to get along with how things are rapidly changing in this country. And it's a shame. It's a shame that these lunatics in Parliament, especially these left-wing individuals, do not understand that the problem that creates. All right, guys, let's go to the next story. This is Jacinta Allen. So we're going to do some Victorian politics now. And I do realize this show is going into a bit of the later hours. It's 10 o'clock now in Canberra. So most of you watching in Melbourne, where a lot of the people watching my shows are from, very late at night, guys. I know. But I've been, just chatting with you guys, responding to some of your comments, taking it a bit chill. Let's have a look at this. Jacinta Allen turned into a street journalist. All right, let's have a look. 1 second. Pull this out.
Hi, I'm Jacinta Allen, and we're on track with JA, and we're going to hear from everyday.
I just got to pause it there. But my show is called Rukshan On X, so we've got to have a show name, Rukshan On X. He's got On Track with JA. I'm guessing JA means Jacinta Allen, and On Track is the name of her little series that she's doing now. So could refer to many things, like Victoria is on track for whatever vision that she has. Let's watch it from the start again.
Hi, I'm Jacinta Allen, and we're on track with JA, and we're going to hear from everyday Victorians about what matters most to them.
Access to quality education,
Yeah.
healthcare, affordable housing.
Let me just I'll turn the music filter off because it might get flagged, but I'll just turn the music back on.
Hi, I'm Jacinta Allen, and we're on track with JA, and we're going to hear from everyday Victorians about what matters most to them.
Access to quality education,
Yeah.
healthcare, affordable housing, a reliable public transport system.
So I'd say accessibility, and what I mean by that is, public transport, affordability, job opportunities, things like that.
I feel like number one, it is being able to spend time with my daughter and watching her grow and develop and do all the little things like starting to laugh and talk to us in her own way. Those are the big things that sort of, really matter to me now.
Yeah.
So
We live in the best place in Australia. We have so much to celebrate, and I look forward to sharing with you what matters most from everyday Victorians.
No, it's not lost on me, guys. It's not lost on me the fact that I'll put the volume down. The audio is a bit terrible there. She's in a train. They could have worked on some better sound isolation when they're filming that. But it's not lost on me the fact that even in this video, the majority of the people on this train are people of immigrant backgrounds, for instance. And mostly South Asian looking individuals who are in this video. So that's just kind of taking it back to what we were discussing previously. But this is the changing dynamics of Victoria. Now, Jacinta Allen, I saw a comment here, someone saying that we are on track to communism. Where was that comment? So Jacinta Allen's show's name is Jacinta Allen On Track. On Track with Jacinta Allen, JA. Maggie says Jacinta Allen is Daniel Andrews in a dress. Has anyone merged the two photos of Daniel Andrews and Jacinta Allen to see if they're actually one in the same? Eric says, nah, she's best watched muted too. Dan Max says, this is a joke. No, this is not a joke, Dan. This is her new thing, street talk. So, Avi Yemeni, watch out. We've got Jacinta Allen now hitting the mean streets of Melbourne to interview people. How much money do you guys want to bet with me that this was actually all staged? That all these people knew to be on the train? Labour set all this up. This wasn't just random people on a train. Or she had one of her little minions go around, talk to these individuals, explain the whole scenario to them, make sure that they were kosher for the camera, right, and then interview them. Because if you ask a lot of Victorians about Jacinta Allen just randomly on a train, I think they would give you very mixed opinions around the state of affairs in Victoria right now. But these people are very happy to be interviewed by Jacinta Allen. Daniel, I bet it's the first time on public transport. Now, I don't really know, say for sure, but I understand that comment. And in jest, I'll agree with you in jest that it's, she probably doesn't catch public transport too often. But for a show, she will jump on a train. Especially with the suburban rail loop. She loves putting on the construction hat like all these politicians do. But I don't think this is a normal thing that she would do for sure. Kavita says, yeah, are these actors? That's what it feels like. That feels like these guys are all set up. Or they could be paid employees. Again, I don't know for sure, allegedly. They could be paid employees, according to Dan Mack. They do look like Labour Party staffers. So what do you guys think? Is Victoria on track? I don't think so. I don't think Victoria's on track. I think Victoria's on track to disaster. Someone earlier said Victoria's on track to communism. Dale here says that Jacinta Allen, corrupt puppet of the Labour corruption empire. And yeah, all of Australia pretty much is a Labour. Free Mikey. I'd rather watch Sam Newman street talk. Yeah, Sam Newman was great back in the day, definitely. I mean, he's still great now on his podcasts and things, but when he was on the street, it was very entertaining. A lot of that would probably be not politically correct for TV or that kind of medium anymore, but he'd get into a lot of trouble. But back then, it was great. Little Cat Feet says, Jacinta, can you please return your machetes anonymously? Can you please return your machete anonymously if it's not too much trouble? He's defo a tough on crime person. And I got some views on crime in Victoria as well. We're going to touch on that as well. Judy B, thanks for joining in, Judy, and watching the show. She says Derailed with Jacinta. And that's actually a great name for the show. Not On Track with JA, Derailed with JA. So let's pull up the next story here. Another Victorian. This is a Victorian classic. Because Victoria, there's nothing more in Victoria than they love doing than revenue raising. Especially Victoria Police. They love their cameras. They love finding people. They love catching people out. They love entrapment. Possible. Let's have a listen to this story and let me know what your thoughts are on this. Make it a bit bigger.
Is using undercover spotters to crack down. A sophisticated operation is using undercover spotters to crack down on distracted drivers touching their mobile phones. Police data has revealed the worst offenders and the outrageous excuses given for putting lives at risk. Jack Ward has the exclusive details.
Dressed in plain clothes with their radios at the ready, these undercover police are on the hunt for mobile phones in traffic.
Whether you're driving or stationary, you can't touch your phone.
Once caught in the act, the sneaky spotters raise the alarm so drivers can be pulled over for questioning down the road. So you weren't on your phone?
No, I'm just doing the bank battery.
I'm just putting in the navigation for my car, and then that's all. And then the next second I actually still don't know what's going on.
The highway
I just gotta go back. We'll watch this again. It's just funny that I'm not surprised this is happening in Victoria, to be completely honest. If we remember during the COVID times, right? Go back to that period. I don't like going back to COVID that often because we talked about it so much for so long. But how many times do we hear stories of neighbours dobbing in neighbours? People snitching on their friends, on their people snitching on workers, on employees. We heard that so much. So there is this predisposition, at least here in Victoria, for people to snitch on each other and catch people out. So this particular tactic, now I don't know if these are members of the public or is this policemen. I'm guessing it's police people who are dressed as tradies. Here, this person's got like a normal outfit on with a cat, like a bum bag type thing. and they're watching people on the phone, just casually blending into society, and then calling up the police who are up the road, get them on the phone. Now, I'm not encouraging people, obviously, to use mobile phones while they're driving. It's distracting. It's really, not a practice that I want to make a habit of, and we're probably all guilty of it. Of course, there's sometimes in Victoria where the traffic is horrendous. The roads are so crap in Victoria during peak hour that you do get stuck on these in these spots where the urge to check on your phone or to put something else on, or to put a podcast or something on does happen. But yeah, we're obviously becoming over-policed. There's cameras all over the state of Victoria, especially when you come into the CBD. There's cameras everywhere. A lot of them are just revenue-raising. Almost all of them are revenue-raising, the way it's all set up. And this is just another sting operation to catch people out, obviously. They're saying it's for safety. But is it really? Is it just more a sneaky way for Victoria Police to revenue raise? I'll put it from the start and I won't interrupt this time.
A sophisticated operation is using undercover spotters to crack down on distracted drivers touching their mobile phones. Police data has revealed the worst offenders and the outrageous excuses given for putting lives at risk. Jack Ward has the exclusive details.
Dressed in plain clothes with their radios at the ready, these undercover police are on the hunt for mobile phones in traffic.
Whether you're driving or stationary, can't touch your phone.
Once caught in the act, the sneaky spotters raise the alarm so drivers can be pulled over for questioning down the road. So you weren't on your phone?
No, I'm just doing the bank battery.
I'm just putting in the navigation for like my car, and then that's all. And then the next second I actually still don't know what's going on.
The Highway Patrol veterans have heard all the same excuses.
We're still seeing people watching YouTube videos, even FaceTiming, and it's still an offence.
More than 12,500 people were fined by police last year because of mobile devices. About 7 in every 10 were dished out to men. New road safety cameras tell a similar story, with men outnumbering women by more than 10,000.
Unfortunately, the message is still not getting through, so we need to run operations like this today.
While no one is immune, men in their 30s have been put on notice for being the most distracted. Each person caught is slapped with a $611 fine and the loss of 4 demerit points. So they're saying that you were on your phone, were you?
I was just putting in the navigation, and then I'm just like I'm in a rush to go back home. That's all.
I will not do the next time, okay?
Please do the right thing. We need to bring the road toll down, and it's a joint effort.
Jack Ward, 9 News.
Who is watching YouTube? Maybe they're watching Rukshan On X as they're driving. I don't know. Look, I do use YouTube for like podcasts and stuff. So I just play it in the background, but I have a system where it's kind of linked to the car, and it's not necessarily you can't watch something right while you're driving. It's crazy. I don't recommend these things. Even when I talk about this particular thing, I'm not recommending people do this action. I'm just raising the issue that obviously police are going undercover, and you got to be careful so you know that this is happening as well. And anything for revenue raising, right? Look at all the stuff that's happening in the state of Victoria right now. Look at all the issues that we have with crime. These guys have enough resources to have people dressed undercover walking the streets of Melbourne to work on a sting operation against people driving in their cars. Makes you wonder, right? Makes you wonder. But I did think it was funny, the kid that got caught and said he has no idea what's happening. Because imagine getting pulled over by the cops, right? Imagine getting pulled over by the cops. You get fined for touching your phone because some dude down the road saw you. And the next thing you know, Channel 9 has a camera sticking into your car window, asking you how you feel about the fine and telling you the story of how they caught you by using this little tactic that they're doing. Of course, that guy's tripping out. And yeah, Madeline, definitely the crime issues in Victoria are intense, right? Machete bins, we're going to be talking about those machete bins until this ban comes through, because I'm really looking forward to seeing how many machetes are actually handed in when this the amnesty period ends. Will they give us statistics? Because I don't think that these bins are being, they're going to be as successful as the Allen government is making them out to be. Dan Max says, I remember a guy reading while driving down the Monash Freeway. Look, I spend a lot of time on the road, and I do see also all sorts of insane things happening. I've definitely seen people putting on makeup and stuff. But look, the problem is like the traffic is sometimes so bad on like the Monash Freeway that it's bumper to bumper. People are stuck, and I kind of understand that people do these things. Definitely, if you're in a normal road conditions, you should not be doing any of those things, right? A lot of the time I've seen people distracted is really just because they're stuck in traffic. Imagine finishing work in Melbourne, right? You finish work around 5:30, 6 p.m. in this, let's say you're working in the city. And to get back home, if you're going to one of the outer suburbs, you're looking at 1.5 hours, 2 hour journey just because the roads are so crap in terms of the traffic. It's just so congested. Typical journey without any traffic on that particular road might be 30, 40 minutes. But now you're in there for like 2 hours maybe. Sometimes it's like for 3 hours if there's a car accident or something like this. So, and maybe that was because someone was distracted, I don't know. But you see the problem, right? So people do get distracted. But whether it's, police having to sting people by catching them out with secret disguises, I don't know. Yeah, Arthur says the ring road is crazy to drive in. Yeah, trust me, I've had my fair share of internalized road rage. I don't tend to get too verbally angry as I'm driving, but internally I felt like, damn, it's crazy. But it's really good. In Melbourne is a great city if you want to kind of get through a podcast, a 3 hour long podcast or something like that. You have a lot of time as you're driving, so I get a lot of listening done. Anyway, guys, let's keep going along to the next story. I'm getting through them. We're going to keep in Victoria, and speaking about crime, story I saw today, actually, and this was from yesterday, but I'll read this anyway. Get to my Apple News running. Bush Summit. Mildura victims of crime turn vigilante to hunt down youth criminals. Read story. Victims of crime in Mildura are taking the law into their own hands as a way to recover their stolen goods. Fed up locals who have fallen victim to thieves stealing their hard-earned possessions have been physically chasing and knocking on doors of suspected offenders in recent months. Mildura residents say that the under-resourced and overworked police can only do so much and are unimpressed by the judicial system that allows crooks to continuously reoffend. I mean, guys in Mildura, the police have a lot of time to be dressed in undercover, looking for people on their mobile phones. So maybe they can reroute some of these resources, right? Scott Watts, whose motorcycle repair business was subjected to an alleged ram raid and robbery, said victims of crime were fed up with criminals who get away with it. 3 of his clients' motorcycles, worth nearly $40,000 in total, were allegedly stolen late last month before his workers and mates sprung into action. The police have done what they can do, the 30-year-old said from his business dirt bike service. After it happened, we had 4 or 5 youths driving around for hours all over the weekend. Mr. Watt's close friend Jason Stewart said he and the vigilante group spent hours driving around the regional city, following dirt bikes and visiting addresses supplied by fellow locals. Mr. Stewart, 48, said he personally sighted one of the bikes around town and gave chase in his own ute. In a matter of hours, we knew the 3 kids who allegedly pinched the bikes and where they were supposedly living. We contacted police and gave them the information. The Mildura community is small but powerful. You put a post up on Facebook and it goes out to tens of thousands of people. Most of the community has just had enough of crime. Again, look, we shouldn't be living in a state, country that requires the public to become vigilantes to fight back against crime. But things do seem out of control now in Victoria. It's only gotten worse. When you look at the home invasions, right? People being bashed in their houses, stabbed by these thugs. We have a lot of theft, a lot of robberies, and in this particular town, they've had enough. And it's a smaller town, so a bit more controlled environment in the sense that people might know each other a little bit more. Maybe it's a bit more tight-knit, and it's easier to find these people. But I get it. I get why these people are frustrated, and I get why they've taken the law into their own hands in some instances. And I get the rise of vigilantes, because the police, really, they're saying they're under-resourced and understaffed. But there's a lot of things at play here. The judicial system, which lets these offenders out on bail, sometimes up to 50 times. We've had individuals out on bail. They continue to reoffend. They have no respect for property. And, people are just fed up and sick of it. So I get it. I'm sympathetic to these people who have taken it into their own hands. A pair of Mildura tradies whose work use were allegedly ransacked also handed out flyers asking locals to be aware of stolen tools circulating in the market. You guys can go have a read of this story. It's just on there. I support the vigilantes in this instance. Now, I'm not encouraging acts of violence against offenders or things like this. But if you have to now start getting together with other people and trying to find stolen goods that might be valuable to you, or putting them out there to a community page and following up with that, and people organizing, it is a consequence directly of government inaction. But yeah, there's that story there. I wanted to show that just because we saw police resources being used for spying on locals. The next story I had was a good news story, actually, related to crime. And this was the petition. A petition with 10,000 signatures forces Victorian Parliament to debate potential review of self-defense laws. So I don't know if you remember, 2-3 weeks ago, the government, by one vote, the Labour government pushed back against David Limbrick and I guess a motion to have a inquiry or to discuss review the self-defense laws, in particular allowing homeowners more rights in terms of if people come to their house, there's this kind of implied right that they can defend themselves without any real ramifications in law. Now, you can already defend yourself, but they might put you through the whole system, right, to prove that you did the right thing, that self-defense was justified. Whereas people want to make it more so that if someone does enter your private property, your home, that those individuals, you have more rights to act at that time to defend your property and your possessions in a manner that you think is suitable, without having the full weight of the law brought up against you. That the person that came into your house is the one that's done the wrong thing, and therefore they are suffering the consequences of entering your property. Now, of course, there'd still be something that would go to court or whatever, but the presumption would not necessarily be on the fact that what it is right now is where you kind of have to prove that, hey, I'm so sorry that I hurt this person, or it was self-defense and this is why, and the police may try to prosecute you saying that no, it wasn't self-defense. So the Victorian Parliament will be forced to debate a potential review of self-defense laws in a bid by one MP to give residents more power to protect their homes and families. More than 10,000 Victorians have now signed a petition for updated self-defense laws, which will automatically trigger a parliamentary debate on the issue. The petition of certain citizens of the state of Victoria draws to the attention of the Legislative Council the urgent need for clearer self-defense laws to better protect individuals and families in their own home, it says. Concerned community members believe that current self-defense provisions sufficiently allow people to protect themselves, their loved ones, don't sufficiently allow people to protect themselves, their loved ones, and property from unlawful intruders. Under current Victorian law, self-defense is only available as a defense if it is in response to a perceived threat. A person must have a reasonable belief that they are facing a threat to their life or a serious bodily harm. This is ambiguous and leaves law-abiding citizens occupants vulnerable to criminal prosecution and or civil proceedings, even when defending themselves against home invasions. So this was kind of spearheaded by David Limbrick. Even though the particular motion in Parliament wasn't successful, thanks to this petition, they are now being forced to consider this, which I think is a great step forward. And hopefully, government considers what people are going through and relaxes some of these laws to give homeowners and people on their private property more rights to defend themselves. One of the most ridiculous things that the Attorney General in Victoria said during that time, and a lot of the Labour people were saying, is that if you're in a situation like this, call the police, right? That's what you got to do. You got to call the police. But the police don't always show up. The police might be busy, Jacinta Allen. The police might be busy in undercover clothing, trying to catch people on their phone on a busy, at a busy intersection where the traffic is not moving whatsoever. The police might be very busy, so they might not be able to come to your house as a African youth is standing there with a machete that he hasn't dropped in the bin to rob you and to stab you. So the police might not turn up in time. So I think it will be valuable for people in Victoria to have protections under the law to protect themselves in their own home. That's the least that the government can allow for people to do to protect themselves. Of course, we can look at things like pepper spray or allowing people to have certain types of weapons to protect themselves in their own home. Those are things I think that should be considered as well, because often these criminals come with their own weapons. But yeah, that's that story. And look, I think overall, Victoria's crime problem is only just going to get worse and worse before there's any improvement. Whether that will come in the form of a different party winning an election, doesn't look like it so far. With the Liberal Party, they're struggling when you look at the polls. But yeah, let's look at some of your comments. George Freeze says, right to life or self-defense is a God-given right. It is not derived from government. Yeah. And look, we have the right to self-defense. It's just there's so many complications in relation to that when it comes to the law. So, what is a perceived threat, right? Of threat to yourself, your life, or from bodily harm. Usually, I feel like what happens is, these justices, these lawyers get involved. They find ways to be like, oh, well, you could have not handled in that way. Did you really have to flash back at the intruder in that manner and injure them? Right? You become the villain almost in these scenarios, as it is right now. Whereas if these home invaders knew that the person in the house could just defend themselves and neutralize, whatever attempt they need trying to do in that house, and there's no ramifications to the extent of, they are responsible for their actions, then yeah, they might think twice about it. Some people, obviously might take it too far. That's always a problem. But what's the other solution to the crime wave that we have right now? If the police can't do it, what other solution? You have to protect yourself. So guys, let's have a look at some of your comments related to crime in Victoria. I'm just going to skip through and find some of these. I hope you're enjoying the show. This is Rukshan On X. I do this on Monday nights and Wednesday nights, usually between 7 p.m. to 9 p.m, depending on what's happening. As I'm on the road this week in Canberra, I do it a bit later on because by the time I get back to the hotel, set everything up. Again, there's no preparation that goes into any of this besides just looking up a few stories that I've been following throughout the day or the week, especially ones from today. And then I go through it with you guys and talk about it with your comments. So if you enjoy that type of format, it's very chilled. You might look at me and be like, hey, he's not really not giving really intellectual commentary regarding this. I don't want to do that. I want to keep it very casual, very light. The late night show, we're just talking like friends, let's say, when we're doing these chats. So why do we have to complicate it by getting all intellectual? If you want to see a bit more of an intellectual discussion on some of these topics, tune into the Opposition podcast on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. and Thursday nights at 7 p.m. with Avi Yemeni. At least myself will be more intellectual on that show. Avi, I don't know. Daniel says the cops are on their phones while driving all the time. I do see a lot of police on their phone when they're driving. Perhaps they have some exemption. I'm not 100% sure. I see this comment a lot on my comments. Is anyone selling a VL Turbo? Is that some sort of like a run in joke that happens on all Facebook groups, or am I just noticing it now on my page because I'm seeing a lot more people write things like this? I know VL Turbos are perhaps very popular. I think it was one of the cars that they steal the most as well in Victoria. Marcella says, they have anything better to do. I would have said that road toll load of crap. Look, we definitely have to protect people on the roads, and you don't want distracted drivers on their phones. I definitely agree that we need to take care of that. We also have the issue now in Victoria. We have a lot of distracted pedestrians. So many times, I live in the city of Melbourne, so many times when I'm driving around Melbourne, you have these randoms just like stepping onto the road, pedestrians, staring at their phone, not looking at anything. And it's so hectic sometimes that I wonder, like, people are putting themselves at risk when they do this. Tika says, who's going to walk down the street from a car park with a machete to hand in? Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing the final figures from this machete amnesty. Dan Max says, come on, Rukshan. Those bins are out there working hard. Your skepticism is unwarranted. I did see some photos of even bins out there that are covered up. Is it actually active, the scheme right now? It's hard to make sense of it all. Vaseline says someone did well out of those bins. Yeah, I think 350k a bin technically. Apparently, it's all the other costs that are associated with the bin, not just the bin itself. Which apparently someone I heard on 3AW the other day say that they can put that bin together for 9k. So it's a massive disparity between 9k and $350,000. But people are saying that's like the upkeep, the maintenance. Apparently, paying the staff to go and get the machetes and then dispose of the machetes. So all of that is worked into it. But I'm sure there is a couple of people who are very aligned with Labour in some respects, some mates perhaps, who have had a nice payday. Isn't that normally what happens when it comes to these type of contracts? Remember when Dan was filmed using his phone while driving? Yeah, I think I do. I also remember when he walked in wearing the mask during, not wearing his mask, sorry, when he was criticizing everyone else around mask mandates. That was hilarious. And he had to apologize. Yeah, business invasions too. That's right. Yeah, it's not just home invasions. Lots of shops getting broken into. I was, other day, I was in JB Hi-Fi trying to buying this Mac Mini for this stream, which has been quite steady, guys. It's been very good, right? There hasn't been any interruptions or crashes, so the Mac Mini, it's doing its jobs. But yeah, we were asking staff at JB Hi-Fi in the city, can we see like the MacBooks and stuff, right? Because normally you go into city shops and the MacBooks and stuff like that are on display. You can just kind of look at it. They got their security on it. And then yeah, the staff member was like, "Nah, they're all out the back now." And I noticed that at a couple of JB Hi-Fis now. So it just clicked to me when the staff member told me that we can't have them out here anymore because we have gangs roaming around that come into our stores and just rip these laptops, these MacBooks especially, off the security and just run off with them. And they come in packs and gangs. This is like, you see these videos from America in the Apple stores where you have these kind of gangbangers walking into the stores and looting them. We're kind of at that stage in Victoria, in Melbourne. I hate to say it. And we can't even have MacBooks on display right now at JB Hi-Fi, in the city at least. So if you don't believe me, you can go have a look. JB Hi-Fi on Elizabeth Street. Their MacBooks have been all put away. Julie says, it seems like hardworking citizens are targeted for traffic offences fines so they can get that money, but those in the other crime minority groups are protected. Priorities are out of whack. That's true. That's what it definitely feels like. It's like almost like a two-tier system of punishment where they punish ordinary people who are just kind of driving, perhaps touch their phone. And yes, there can be dangerous ramifications for sure. But it's also dangerous when people break into your house and stab someone. And those people tend to get out on bail without even fines, right? $600 fine and 4 demerit points for touching your phone. Been a fun show, guys. I'm still going. I'm not done yet. Probably go for another 20-30 minutes. So if you're enjoying, feel free to follow me if you haven't already on Facebook, Facebook, X, and YouTube, where I stream this show. This is actually simulcast. I've got about 1,000 comments, and I see people here arguing amongst themselves. Adam is a particular person that people are arguing with. But Adam, thanks for helping the algorithm. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying. I'll have a look later on. If you've said anything Look, I don't mind the trolls, but if you're saying stuff which is obviously violent or threats of death, things like this, those are not acceptable. I think that's just wrong. But I don't know. I haven't been following this particular conversation that's going on. All I know is that people are chatting with Adam. All right, next story, guys. Let me pull up the next story. Maybe we'll finish up with this story. Unless you guys want to talk about the March for Australia as well. We'll finish up on a somewhat light-hearted story, I guess, depending on who you are. And look, I'm sorry for playing another one of Abby Chatfield's videos. I apologize before I even start doing this, but we have to watch this video. So, and even, retards down under on X, if you're not following, they've also apologized for even sharing this. But he said, I apologize in advance for making you watch this. Abby Chatfield is saving the world from more retards by deciding not to have kids due to the climate crisis we are apparently facing. Apparently, Earth only has 100 years left. What a legend. Sorry, what a retard. Sorry, I didn't read that right. Let's have a listen to Abby Chatfield.
Parents, don't get mad when I ask you this, okay? I have an actual question for you, and I'm asking this in the most earnest way possible. This is not a gotcha. This is a genuine question to parents or people who are pregnant or people who have decided to have a baby, like you're doing IVF or something. People who either have had a baby or have decided to have a baby in the past year or two, okay? How do you rationalize having a baby with the climate crisis? I'm not asking this as a gotcha. I'm not going, how dare you? I'm genuinely asking because I want kids. I just don't feel that it's possible for me to have them with the climate collapse happening right now. Like
this whole argument, even the very start of it, I know she said it at the premise as, I'm just asking parents questions. But now she's going to go into a diatribe about why she's not deciding not to have children, whatever. And she talks about this climate crisis. So let's hear what Abby Chatfield has to say about the climate crisis.
I just don't feel that it's possible for me to have them with the climate collapse happening right now. Like, I notice the climate changing every day. There's something strange going on, whether it's internationally or even just in my home. So I'm just wondering, how did you, when you made the decision, factor in the climate crisis? Because it seems as though we only have like max 100.
I just don't buy into this, that parents, normal people, like everyday people, when they're having children, which usually happens spontaneously, not factoring in this so-called alleged climate crisis that Abby Chatfield is saying is existing. I don't believe that that's how most children have not come about during a conversation about, hey, with the climate crisis, should we have a kid or not? This scenario that she is portraying right now, I think is applicable to lunatics like her and other individuals in that same kind of category, that which perhaps are using this as an excuse, perhaps. I don't know, but I don't think this is the normal thing that she's trying to portray it as.
100 years left until things are completely done. And that isn't including all of the lead up of famine and no water and the amount of deaths from natural disasters and lack of insurance and financial instability and AI and da 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 da. Like,
I love at the end how she just threw in AI, because AI is apparently also contributing to this. She's talking about natural disasters. She's talking about the number of deaths. Again, the correlation between all of those things and people not having children, or people not deciding to have children, or that being the reason, does not exist in the real world. It exists in the minds of people like Abby Chatfield. And the fact that she's trying to normalize the conversation, either she's just looking for engagement bait with this particular topic, or she's genuinely, like, this is genuinely her worldview and the way that she's thinking about, raising a family and raising children. And someone actually brought a great point up in the comments that when we look at the declining birth rates of the West, perhaps it's because of reasons and individuals like this. Like, there are people coming here who have no idea of any of these kind of inclinations that Abby Chatfield is saying, that making perfectly fine babies and children and families Whereas people like Abby Chatfield, maybe these kind of lefties sometimes that are so obsessed with this particular topic, might not be making more children. Let's see what she says.
How? Because I don't think that parents are just going, whatever, like some people are, but I think parents are, for the most part, wanting to do the best for their child. So I want to know how you rationalize that, because I want to steal your rationale so that I can have a kid. You know what I mean? Like, if the climate crisis wasn't happening...
If you listen to her carefully, she's basically saying that you're a bad person for having a children. You are not so enlightened as her to be aware of the climate crisis that she alleges. And therefore, that is why she's not had a child. But because, how do you rationalize having a child knowing that the destruction of the world is upon us? Let's keep going.
I would be ripping out my IUD and I'd be going, Adam, legs up, But unfortunately, I'm aware of the climate crisis and I think about it most of the day, every day. And like Adam and I have spoken.
That's just not true. Like, that's if she's actually doing that, that's actually, I think, retarded. But really, that's how you live your life? What an insane individual.
Spoken about this, and we say once my IUD is up in about 4 years, we'll see what the outlook for climate change is. If it's got no improvement, we can't have a kid because that's not responsible. But I just wonder what your theorizing is. Now, I have heard people say, well, and I have thought this as well, if all of the climate deniers have children, then it'll just get worse because they'll breed people who aren't aware, and we need people that are aware to fix the problem. And like, I get that. I just think it's a lot to bet on maybe my kid being the one that cures the climate crisis. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of pressure to put on the little chook. I've also heard people say, like, humanity will persevere. And to that I say, no, they won't. I don't think we will work it out. I actually don't think that we will. I think it's looking pretty bad. And we're also past the point of no return. So
it's such a dumb, stupid take by Abby. I'm sorry for even watching this with you guys. I'm feeling stupid as I watch this with you. Just thinking about all the things that humans have persevered through like tens of thousands of years to get to the point we are at today. And here is like, this is the end result of a lot of this kind of liberalism movement, this left-wing movements, is someone like this lamenting the fact that she's so good, such a virtuous individual, that she's worried about the impending doom of the world. So therefore she will not procreate and have more children, or have any children right now, in fact. And she's now questioning the rationale of individuals who are raising families, which is what we as humans are essentially meant to be doing. She's questioning those people, saying that the world is ending. How do you justify having children? Crazy.
If it's those two reasons, respectfully, don't comment. I've thought about it, and that isn't enough for me. So if you have anything more, if you have anything that like, I want to have a kid, I just feel like I want to cry. I feel like the opportunity and the choice has been taken away from me and from so many people my age and younger who...
Literally no one has taken away any opportunity from her or any other woman that can to have a child and to raise a family or start a family. No opportunity has been denied whatsoever. This is a choice that she has voluntarily made based on some ideological view about the end of the world and this obsession with climate change, and that somehow this decision that she has made is a sacrifice to save the rest of us. Crazy.
I'm 30 who want to have children, but like, well, I can't. I can't have kids. I don't want to be worrying about if there's water or food for my child in 30 years and look back and go, oh my God, when I was...
No water and food in 30 years. Come on. Seriously.
I was 30, I knew this would happen. And now I'm watching my child starve to death. Oh, now I'm having to go and forage. I don't know what the hell will even happen. But I know it's not going to be good. So I just need some hope, I guess, or some reasoning. If you've thought about the climate crisis and you've still gone ahead with having children, because as I said, I want children. I'm not trying to do a gotcha. I swear I'm not asking in a way of like, how irresponsible. I actually want to know what your thoughts are, because I want to have the same optimism, I guess, as you, but I just don't think, I don't know. I try and I try and I try and I try. And even when we talk about having kids, it's a nice fantasy for maybe 5 minutes. And I go, well, that's fucked. We can't have a kid. We can't have a kid when the climate is fucking collapsing around us. Like, I'm literally looking at the weather right now. I'm like, this isn't normal. Like, it's not normal for this time of year to be this windy and extreme and pouring rain, then sunshine. Like, it's not normal. Anyway, let me know in the comments why you've had a kid with the climate crisis happening, and I'm genuinely wanting some hope. I'm not trying to come for you, because everyone seems to think that I'm some fucking psychotic, demonic fucking bitch. I'm actually...
I wonder why. Everyone thinks that. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I just saw the start of that video and I thought I'll watch it with you guys tonight, because you know, it's always entertaining listening to Abby Chatfield just for a laugh, because it is like comedy, really. To even think that this is a serious conversation that she was having with people on the other side, and to actually think, as insane as she is, the fact that people maybe take what she says as gospel. There are a lot of people that actually support her, and you know, this whole kind of "you go girl" attitude. And I don't know if the world will be. What do you guys think? The world will be a better place if Abby Chatfield, like she's saying, that she herself is making a sacrifice right now to save all of us. Is that a good thing or a bad thing that she has made this sacrifice at this time? And she wants people to convince her that she should have a kid anyway, despite the fact that she believes in 30 years' time that she will be foraging around for food and looking for water because of the climate crisis that we've heard all this talk before for almost 30, 40 years now about the impending doom of the world. Global boiling, global warming, global cooling. It's all things we've heard before. Humans adapt, technology changes. We've made these dramatic shifts in human evolution over a long period of time, regardless of the consequences or the circumstances that we may have faced at those times as a species, as a people. And we've managed completely fine up until this point, until Abby Chatfield, of course, realized that the world is about to end in the next 30 to 100 years. We've been managing really fine, and I think we'll be fine going into the future. Well beyond that, Abby. But maybe we'll check in on Abby Chatfield in 30 years and see if she's foraging around for food and water. That might be entertaining. Now, guys, I'm going to finish up the show, but before I do that, I will talk about the March for Australia. A few questions at the start of the show about the March for Australia. Now, so that's coming up on Sunday at I think 12 p.m. nationwide. So let's just bring up March for Australia. I'm just going to go to their Facebook page. Not Facebook, sorry, X. Let's go to the X profile. I think they have an X profile. That's right, March for Australia. I looked at drama persists. There's always drama. There's been drama for weeks with this. Let's have a look. Go to their Facebook page. So we got March for Australia. What did they have put up recently? So letterbox drops. Okay, they're doing letterbox drops for mass immigration. Nationwide marches against mass immigration. Okay, so they're getting a bit more organized. They got Captain Cook Memorial in Canberra is now the location for the rally there. Let's listen to this individual, Morgan Cox.
31st of August. Some of you might know me. If you do, that's probably because you're just like me, just a regular, normal person that doesn't hate anybody. And you might have seen me just stand up and say something that most of us are thinking. Because of this, I've been labelled as a racist. I've been called a Nazi. I've been doxxed. My business has been destroyed. State and federal police have tried to find an excuse to arrest me. It's been difficult. but all of that pales in comparison to what the government's doing to us. They're forcing us out of our homes, and they're taking away our children's futures. Maths is not racist, and it's not a complicated issue. The fact is the government is bringing millions of people here, and we don't have enough homes and hospitals and roads for the people that are already here. If you look around, you can see the homelessness. You certainly know people who are struggling to pay the bills even though they work hard. And you can know in your bones that it's getting worse and millions of people are going to suffer. So about this rally, whoever started it, whoever's organising it, whoever will be there, even if it's Nazis, it's your opportunity to stand up and be heard as well. It's your opportunity to say to the government, this is not okay. I don't accept this. This is not acceptable in a first world country. I think that we should all go. You should do it for your family. You should do it for your friends, your neighbours, your kids, for me, for my immigrant partner and for my kids. If the government or the Nazis or Antifa or whoever else is there attack us for fighting for the rights, the basic human rights of our fellow Australians, then you should wear that as a badge of honour. On the 31st, whoever you are, wherever you came from, whatever your race, creed or religion, this is your opportunity to stand up and to be heard. I think everyone should go. I think we should ignore the haters on both sides from all directions, because we're not doing this because of hate. We're doing it because of love, because we care about our fellow Australians. We care about the old ladies living in caravans. We care about the children living in tents. We care about the long waits at the hospitals. We care about the congested roads, and we care about being thrown out of our homes. I really hope that we'll be heard by the government. This is a very simple message. Everyone deserves a home, Albo.
So I thought I'd play that whole video because Morgan there, he kind of summarized a lot of the kind of opinions that I'm seeing from people who are attending this march. A lot of people saying that they're going to attend despite, you know, the dubious beginnings of this particular movement and some of the individuals who are involved, which I've also commented on, and I've shared my thoughts about all of this. And I think it's important that people are actually aware and know what they're getting themselves into. But Morgan makes some points that, you know, as Australians, that you can all unite and you can maybe you know, stand up to some of these forces as well that will try to portray things in a certain way. Now, it's yet to be seen how all of this plays out, but I am seeing the momentum building for this. And as we get closer to the 31st, you are going to have, I guess, more attacks from political class and the government and the mainstream media class, very direct in terms of their messaging around opposition to this rally. And it is unfortunate that some of the organizers, for instance, some of the things that they've said in the past or recently perhaps, as well as some of the people that have taken credit in terms of trying to hijack this particular rally. Some people say that, you know, it's all kind of a setup or a psyop as well. So all these views will exist, but we will see a lot more of this stronger messaging from the mainstream media, from politicians against this particular rally. And we are also seeing the counter-protests that are being planned by the pro-Palestinian movement. For instance, we saw that they was talking about it in Sydney the other day, that they will oppose this march, which we heard that from the left-wing groups here in Melbourne, that they will counter-protest and oppose this march. But yeah, look, I think, you know, overwhelmingly, I see just everyday Australians that now want to go out there, show pride in the Australian flag. And I'm ending this actual show with talking about the Australian flag again in the opposite, because I started this show talking about those pro-Palestinian protests where you had the Australian individual who was holding an Australian flag removed by police, arrested or whatever, just for holding the Australian flag. And this particular march, you know, it's about respecting that flag, showing that flag, of course, and also at the same time talking about issues like mass immigration, which have, you know, if you look at all the topics that I covered today, whether it be from home ownership, crime, right, as an example, infrastructure, we talked about things like this as well. All of those things do have links to the immigration issue. I talked about identity of Australia, for instance. All that kind of is interlinked with immigration as well, especially mass immigration, in my opinion, especially about the changing face and the demographics of Australia, which obviously impacts the the future of the country, right? The identity of the country. So all those things somewhat combined, and people are passionate about Australia and they want to show their love for the country and they want to get out there and do this on that day, on the 31st. I think pretty much most of the capital cities are covered. If I'm wrong, someone in the comments can correct me. I did at the start see that Hobart will be being done as well, but maybe Hobart hasn't been organised. I'm not 100% sure. I will be there on that Sunday to live stream. So I'll be doing that as probably a joint live stream with Avi. So you'll be able to watch that on my channels or on Avi's channels, wherever you're watching. And we'll be there just streaming what happens. Obviously, I think again, it's still very important that if you're going to this march, just to be aware of everything that's surrounding it and the way that it's being portrayed. And sadly, the way that it's had to be portrayed because of the statements made by certain individuals is just kind of how it all played out. And be vigilant. Make sure you film, things that you might see which are perhaps suspicious, or certain interactions which might not seem like something that could be misconstrued later on or taken out of context by politicians or the media, because this is an event that they could potentially use to stifle proper debate on an issue like mass immigration, because they would love nothing more than to have an incident where it can be used against people really raising concerns around this topic and just being able to just call everyone racist and Nazis. And I know that legitimate people who claim that they themselves are Nazis have taken credit for the march and continue to put out statements to that effect in their own way about how it's about white supremacy and things like this. But we have to, at the end of the day, you can't just be fearful of the way that you're going to be portrayed, or the way that things may happen, right? You're never going to have change, or you're never going to be able to build a popular movement because of fear like this. And the responsibility then is to weed out bad actors, obviously, and obviously try to do your best to portray what happens on that day with evidence, right? That's why I'm live streaming, obviously, to show that this is what happened on that day. But yeah, let's read some more of your comments, guys, and then I'll wrap up the show. As you can see, I'm kind of slurring as I speak. I actually got up at, I think I got up at 6 a.m. today, and then we got to work, got to Parliament House, I think around 8 a.m., like 7:30, something like this, and then wrapped up there around 6:30 p.m. Actually, no, I think around 7 by the time I got back to the hotel and set up for all of this. And then I started this stream at 9, and now it's 11 o'clock. And I got to get up tomorrow morning again at 6 a.m. to get to work. But let's have a look at these comments, and I'll read a couple of them, and then I'll stop this show for tonight as I start to slowly slur and disintegrate as an individual, trying to keep up. All right, let's have a look at the comments. Pull up this screen. I got a super chat here. Let's bring the super chat up. Effie, thank you so much. Appreciate the contribution. Guys, if you've enjoyed the show and you want to show your support, you can do a super chat on YouTube at The Real Rukshan. And obviously, if you do comment super chats as well, I will take a bit more keen focus in on spending a bit of time answering those questions as well. Thank you, Effie, for the contribution. I really appreciate it. Look here. Adam Snake, who's been going hard on these comments, he's got an issue with curry. Skip the Curry Head is playing a video laughing at an Australian. Go eat some curry, Skip. I don't know if you're talking to Skippy or someone else, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of like curry. I don't eat curry like that. So I don't know. Tika says media are trying to make this out to be a Cronulla riots, and again, I don't blame the media to the extent of some of the stuff that's been said by people who are linked to organizing this in different ways. Some of the statements that they've made are not kind of statements that should be. Well, let's put it this way: if an organizer of an event had made those statements, then it makes sense that these kind of insinuations would arise from that statements regarding violence and things like this. So, unfortunately, if you're the face of something or you're the organizer, those things will come to haunt you if you've said things like this in the past, and they will always try to make these links. Whether that, I would do that, for instance, if it was like a left-wing protest and some dude has said something about supporting ISIS and terrorism, and then they're the organizer of a march against Australia, for instance. I would be like, well, this individual has said in the past that they support terrorism and they support ISIS. I can't necessarily blame the media for holding people accountable for their comments. Now, it's up to the individuals to address those comments, and I believe this individual, Beck Freedom, has said that she is sorry for making those comments and that she didn't mean it in that context, but those things were said. So you're just giving the media and the government free win. Mate, you want to give $20? Thanks, mate. I see you're struggling in the comments trying to do a super chat. It's okay. If you can figure it out, that's great, man. If you enjoyed the show, thanks for watching. If you're not a subscriber, Skin Dog Doggy, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll catch up next time as well. And we can do more super chats then, mate. So thanks for watching tonight. I think I read this one before. Jon Snow said it's a white supremacist rally. Look, a lot of people on the left are saying that. That's their opinion. I'm not sure of your particular political persuasions, but there's a default view when anything is mass against immigration, against the prevailing ethos of the left when it comes to things like diversity. That anything that opposes that is a white supremacy movement. And like I've shared today, I'm opposed to mass immigration, and I'm not a white supremacist, even though there has been allegations made in the past that I'm a white supremacist. Obviously by people with a few brain cells missing, if they look at what people say today. Yeah, and I oppose mass immigration, and I oppose these ideas around multiculturalism as being good for society. I don't think it's a good thing. Faith says, can I go in my mobility scooter? I'm not sure exactly where you are, Faith, but generally, I mean, I can't speak for the organizers, but generally protests in Melbourne are usually on, like, in the city of Melbourne, it's usually in pedestrian walkways or like down major roads, and I wouldn't see an issue of a mobility scooter in that environment. I'm not exactly sure of the exact route. I'd probably keep an eye on the, I think it's Melbourne Freedom Rally, who's been putting out some information around this. So if you look up Melbourne Freedom Rally on X or Facebook or YouTube, you might be able to ask them that question if they have a predefined route that they've organized. I don't know enough details to tell you that for sure. Judy B says, in the past, Rukshan, and out of context. Look, again, in the past or present or the context, when you talk about violence and when you talk about things as serious as that, and you're that individual, it's gonna be used. And then again, it's up to those people on the day to show that this is not the case. But I'm not gonna say the media is not gonna use those kind of statements, because definitely, when I look at certain protests or something like that, I do look at the past statements of individuals in those movements to get an understanding of the type of person that is responsible for this. Skippy the Larrikin, thanks, mate. I've seen all your comments today. Thanks for joining in on the show, mate. I will wear a pink tutu. Okay, so nod to Avi. So, guys, Opposition Podcast, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Thanks, Eric, for tuning in, mate, and watching. Appreciate it. Ify says, I respect Australia and the Australian flag. That's the least I think people in this country obviously could do. It's an amazing place, so it's an amazing flag. Dean Adam says, there is nowhere there will be anywhere near the numbers of the Palestinian protests. Look, again, I mean, anything can happen, obviously. It is harder for these type of movements for people to get out. There's a lot of things which have happened which have dissuaded people perhaps from showing up, and I've discussed that earlier. And there is a scenario where certain individuals and groups will portray it as a competition. I don't really think like that. I think it's important to, even if it's a smaller movement at the start, if it can be something serious going forward, where it is a movement of national pride, and these things can build over time and go and get bigger and bigger, but it has to be done in a way that attracts more people. It's got to be like more approachable for everyone. That's why the problem with Nazism, that's why there's problems with that white supremacy stuff, because when you angle things that way, you're going to find a lot of people don't want to be associated with that. Most people want to have nothing whatsoever to do with any of that, so they will not turn up. And that is why you wanted to have a positive movement. Of course, we're talking about a serious issue like mass immigration, but to couch that in some type of racial attack against individuals, I think is wrong, because Australia, if you look at the changing the actual policies around this, requires Australians from all different backgrounds, including immigrant backgrounds, to actually put the people into positions of power, make these changes. You're not going to get that with like a separatist, white supremacist movement. It's just not going to happen realistically. Arthur says, Rook, we've established that Adam's retarded. I've seen a lot of Adam's comment, but I haven't been reading them. But I'll get to them later. Palestine protests, aka BLM protests pre-COVID. Guys, I haven't fallen asleep. I'm just reading through all the comments and catching up. Alright, guys. I think I'm going to call it a night. Thank you for joining in for another episode of Rukshan on X. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We went for, I think, just over... What did we go? We did 2 hours and 20 minutes. What an effort. Appreciate all of you I know some of you have been watching from the very start of the show at 9 p.m. I'll see you again tomorrow night, 7 p.m. You probably at Opposition Podcast, and then Wednesday I'll be back for Rukshan on X. When I'm traveling, I'm in Canberra, so I got to start these shows later. So that's why I get a bit tired as I go ahead. When I do it a bit earlier, maybe I can keep the energy up for a bit longer. Maybe I got to have an energy drink or something before I start as well, or something like this to keep me in the right spirits going forward. If you're new, guys, you can follow me on X, YouTube, and Facebook at The Real Rukshan. You can also find me on Instagram as well at The Real Rukshan. But yeah, usually you'll find me on X commenting on politics. That's where I'm most active. Anyway, thanks so much for joining in, guys. I hope you all have a good night, good evening if you're going to bed now. Anyone watching from around the